The disturbing story of a man who enjoyed bullying people for decades. In this video, we pull back the curtain on a side of Donald Trump that his supporters often ignore and his detractors can never forget. Long before he became a real estate mogul or a controversial president, Trump had a dark reputation as a bully, a man who relished in breaking others down. From his earliest days in Queens, through his time at the New York Military Academy, and later as a powerful figure in business and politics, Trump displayed a disturbing enjoyment in humiliating and dominating people. Join us as we explore the roots of his behavior, exposing the chilling pattern of abuse that defined his rise to power and the lives he left shattered in his wake. In the early years of Donald Trump's life, his aggressive nature and thirst for dominance were evident even in the unassuming streets of Queens, New York. Born into wealth and privilege, Trump was raised in a home that emphasized winning at all costs, a lesson instilled by his father, Fred Trump. Fred, a shrewd and demanding real estate developer, pushed his children to be ruthless and competitive, creating an atmosphere where failure was not an option. For young Donald, this meant more than just succeeding. It meant crushing anyone who stood in his way. As a child, Trump's behavior went beyond the usual playground antics. He was known for his volatile temper and cruel streak, using his size and loud personality to intimidate other kids. Neighbors and former classmates describe a boy who would go out of his way to bully those he perceived as weaker. He would taunt and ridicule, enjoying the discomfort and fear he could provoke. These incidents weren't isolated. They formed a pattern that hinted at deeper behavioral issues. Rather than discipline or correct his behavior, Trump's parents often indulged him, excusing his aggression as a sign of strength. His mother, Mary, was more passive, while Fred seemed to admire his son's brazen attitude, believing it reflected the kind of cutthroat mentality needed for business. Trump's early schooling years were marked by conflict. Teachers struggled to manage his outbursts and defiance, noting his unwillingness to follow rules or respect authority. He was known to brag about getting away with bad behavior, viewing it as a triumph. It was a dynamic that set the tone for his life. Breaking rules and getting away with it became a source of pride. As his outbursts escalated, his parents decided something drastic had to be done. They sent him away to the New York Military Academy in an attempt to instill discipline, but this decision would only serve to sharpen his already combative instincts. At the New York Military Academy, Trump found himself in a harsh environment where discipline was enforced with strict rules and rigid hierarchy. However, rather than being subdued by the military-style discipline, Trump thrived in this setting by adapting his bullying tactics. Here, his aggressive behavior evolved into a calculated form of dominance. He quickly learned to use the regimented structure of the academy to his advantage, manipulating others and using his assertiveness to climb the social ranks. Trump's behavior at the academy was a blend of bravado and calculated cruelty. He was not content with just fitting in. He needed to be at the top of the pecking order, often at the expense of his peers. He bullied fellow cadets, mocking them for their weaknesses, and took pleasure in publicly humiliating those who couldn't stand up to him. Some who attended the academy with him have shared stories of Trump's delight in enforcing punishments and taunting classmates who struggled with the harsh conditions. His charisma and confidence attracted a following, but it was a following built on fear rather than genuine respect. While most students at the academy experienced some form of tough love aimed at building character, Trump's behavior reflected something different. Instead of using the experience as a lesson in humility, he seemed to take it as validation of his belief in survival of the fittest. By the time he graduated, Trump had honed his skills in manipulation and intimidation. He left the academy with a reinforced belief that controlling others through fear and dominance was not just acceptable, but a pathway to success. This mindset would become a hallmark of his personality, setting the stage for his future ventures in business and politics, where these early lessons in bullying would be amplified on a much larger scale. Donald Trump's entry into the business world marked the next phase of his lifelong habit of bullying. but now with far greater stakes and a larger platform. Taking the reins of the family business, Trump didn't just inherit wealth, he inherited a cutthroat approach from his father, Fred Trump, who had built his empire on aggressive tactics and legal maneuvering. From the very beginning, Trump sought not just to compete but to dominate, using fear, manipulation, and a ruthless disregard for others as tools of the trade. In the high-stakes world of New York real estate, Trump quickly made a name for himself, but it wasn't solely due to his business acumen or charisma. His rise was fueled by an unrelenting need to assert power over everyone around him. Contractors and partners became his first targets. Trump developed a reputation for using intimidation tactics to get what he wanted, often refusing to pay agreed-upon fees or changing the terms of contracts on a whim. Those who worked with him often found themselves strong-armed into accepting less money or worse terms, faced with a stark choice: accept the losses or be dragged into prolonged, expensive legal battles that could cripple their businesses. His bullying extended to employees within the Trump organization as well. Trump created a corporate culture that thrived on fear, where loyalty was demanded and dissent was punished. Employees recount stories of public beratings, where Trump would humiliate subordinates in front of their peers as a way to assert control and remind everyone who was in charge. He would openly ridicule staff, calling them idiots or losers, and often fired people on a whim, enjoying the spectacle of it. The message was clear: no one was safe, and everyone was expendable. This environment of constant pressure and fear created a high turnover rate, but it also attracted a certain type of individual who was willing to play the game of cutthroat loyalty and ruthless ambition, mirroring Trump's own approach. Trump's dealings with the media further exemplified his bullying tactics. He became known for calling reporters and threatening them when coverage didn't go his way. He would launch smear campaigns against journalists who dared to criticize him, using his influence to discredit them publicly. Over time, many in the media learned that pushing back against Trump's narrative could come with personal and professional costs, leading some to tread carefully to avoid his wrath. For Trump, this was a calculated strategy. He knew that by instilling fear, he could control the narrative and, in many cases, silence his critics altogether. In business negotiations, Trump's tactics were similarly aggressive. He would often begin with outrageous demands, using a technique known as anchoring, where he would set the starting point so far in his favor that any compromise still left him with the upper hand. He had no qualms about reneging on deals or using the threat of litigation as a tool of intimidation. Lawsuits became a favorite weapon. Trump famously boasted about his willingness to sue at the drop of a hat, once even stating, "I like to fight. I like to win." For many of his adversaries, the mere threat of a lawsuit from Trump, with his deep pockets and team of lawyers, was enough to back down, leaving him with the upper hand. One of the most notorious examples of Trump's bullying in business came with his handling of Atlantic City casino projects in the 1980s and 1990s. Trump's ventures into the casino business were marked by grand promises and aggressive expansion, but they were also littered with broken deals and unpaid contractors. Trump's casinos often failed to pay local businesses for construction and services, leaving many small companies in financial ruin. Trump would leverage his financial power and legal resources, dragging disputes through the courts until his opponents could no longer afford to fight. To Trump, this was simply business as usual. He viewed these tactics as necessary moves in the pursuit of profit and power. His treatment of partners and investors followed a similar pattern. Trump was known for turning on allies the moment it suited him, often renegotiating deals at the last minute or squeezing partners out entirely. He thrived on creating uncertainty, keeping even those closest to him off balance and unsure of his intentions. It was a classic bully tactic: keep others guessing, fearful and submissive, never quite sure when the next attack might come. This approach, while profitable in some instances, left behind a long list of burned bridges and former partners who were eager to tell stories of betrayal and deceit. For Trump, Bullying wasn't just a tactic. It was a core part of his business philosophy. He believed that dominance equated to success, and that those who were bullied were simply too weak to survive in his world. This mindset helped him build a persona as a tough, no-nonsense businessman, but it also left a trail of financial and emotional wreckage. Many who dealt with Trump walked away with broken businesses, shattered careers, and a deep sense of betrayal, while Trump moved on, seemingly unscathed and ready for the next fight. This chapter of Trump's life not only set the tone for his corporate legacy, but also provided a preview of how he would approach power on a much larger scale once he entered the political arena. His tactics of intimidation, manipulation, and outright bullying became his trademark, shaping his public image as a businessman who didn't play by the rules and who relished breaking others down to get what he wanted. When Donald Trump decided to enter the political arena, many observers were skeptical. How could a brash businessman, known for his cutthroat tactics and disregard for the norms of civil discourse, succeed in the delicate world of politics? But for Trump, this was an extension of the same power game he had played his entire life, just on a much larger stage. Rather than adapting to the traditions and decorum of politics, he brought his bullying tactics with him, weaponizing them in unprecedented ways. Trump's rise to power was fueled by his aggressive approach, and his presidency became a masterclass in how to dominate through intimidation, humiliation, and manipulation. From the moment he launched his campaign, Trump set the tone with his signature style of attack. He immediately began branding his opponents with demeaning nicknames designed to belittle and ridicule them in the public eye. Low-energy Jeb, Lion Ted, and Crooked Hillary became the shorthand for his rivals, reducing complex political figures to caricatures. This tactic was remarkably effective because it played into a media environment that thrived on sound bites and sensationalism. Trump knew that by labeling his opponents with simple, memorable insults, he could dominate the news cycle and shape the narrative to his advantage. It was classic bullying, now scaled up to the national stage. His approach to debates further showcased his bullying instincts. Rather than engaging in substantive policy discussions, Trump often resorted to interrupting, mocking, and belittling his opponents. He thrived on creating chaos, throwing his rivals off balance with a barrage of personal attacks and false accusations. During the 2016 debates, his aggressive behavior was on full display as he stalked behind Hillary Clinton on stage, a move that many saw as an intimidation tactic. For Trump, it wasn't about winning arguments on merit. It was about asserting dominance and making his opponents feel small and insecure in front of millions of viewers. Once in office, Trump continued to use the tactics that had served him well in business and campaigning, but now with the full weight of the presidency behind him. He routinely attacked political adversaries, both Democrats and Republicans, who dared to disagree with him. He publicly insulted lawmakers, called them derogatory names, and often resorted to threatening their careers if they didn't fall in line. His weapon of choice became Twitter, a platform where he could deliver his barbs directly to the public. The constant stream of insults and accusations created a climate of fear and uncertainty, even within his own party. Republican leaders who initially opposed him quickly learned that crossing Trump could result in political suicide, as he wielded his influence over his loyal voter base like a cudgel. Trump's bullying extended beyond the political realm. He often targeted members of the media who questioned him, branding respected journalists as fake news and enemies of the people. He sought to discredit the press and undermine their role as a check on his power. At press briefings and interviews, he frequently berated reporters, calling them nasty and stupid in front of the cameras. This wasn't just an attack on individual journalists. It was an assault on the free press itself, a tactic aimed at creating an environment where only Trump's version of the truth mattered. The chilling effect on the media was palpable, as many journalists reported increased threats and harassment from Trump's most fervent supporters. Beyond the media and his political opponents, Trump's bullying extended to public servants and key figures within his own administration. He demanded absolute loyalty. and those who refused to comply faced public humiliation and abrupt firings. Officials like FBI Director James Comey, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and National Security Advisor John Bolton became targets of Trump's ire when they didn't act in accordance with his wishes. He would often publicly disparage them before eventually dismissing them, using their departures as a warning to others who might consider defying him. This atmosphere of fear and instability led to high turnover and a culture where sycophancy was rewarded over expertise. The impact of Trump's bullying tactics during his political career cannot be overstated. He created a toxic, divisive environment where intimidation was normalized and cruelty was equated with strength. His behavior emboldened others who shared his approach, lowering the standard of political discourse and leaving behind a legacy of fractured relationships and deep political polarization. As Donald Trump prepares to assume office once again in January 2025, following his recent electoral victory, the effects of his lifelong pattern of bullying are more evident than ever. Far from retreating from the political stage, Trump has doubled down on the aggressive tactics that have defined his career, using his renewed authority to further cement his legacy of dominance and intimidation. His re-election has emboldened his approach, reinforcing the idea that his methods are not only acceptable, but are key to his continued success. Trump's return to power has reinvigorated the divisive rhetoric that characterized his first term, creating a climate where civility and decorum are increasingly rare. The toxic environment he fostered in his earlier presidency has intensified as political opponents, journalists, and even members of his own administration continue to face public ridicule, threats, and punishment for perceived disloyalty. Trump's use of social media and public platforms has grown even more aggressive, allowing him to shape the national discourse through insults, fear-mongering, and relentless attacks on those who challenge him. The cultural impact of Trump's bullying tactics has reached new heights, with polarization and hostility permeating American society. His rhetoric has emboldened not only his supporters but also others who see his methods as a viable pathway to power. Online harassment, hate speech, and political violence have become even more pronounced, as Trump's leadership style sets the tone for the nation. For many Americans, the sense of safety and mutual respect in political discourse has eroded further, replaced by an atmosphere of conflict and distrust.